Hello, and welcome to day 2 of the Centre for Legal Innovation's Generative AI Summit for 2023. My name is Sam Burrett. I'm from Minter Ellison's Legal Optimization Consulting practice, and I'll be your host for this wonderful panel discussion today, which I've been looking forward to for weeks. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge on behalf of the Centre and the College of Law and myself and our panel, the traditional custodians of the land in all the places on which we meet for the summit today. This session will be focusing on emerging legal roles and how generative AI is reshaping the legal workforce. And what an interesting topic after yesterday's great sessions, which I think focused on the big picture as well as the practical. I'm really excited today to explore roles, what this means for us, legal professionals in particular, and what it might mean for our careers and the careers of our peers moving forward. And we'll be discussing this fascinating topic with 4 expert panelists today. We've got Jan Christie, Director of Capability and Organizational Development at Gilbert & Tobin, Shelley Jane Price, or SJ, Partner at Sterling & Rose, Nam Trong, Digital and Innovation Lead at Law Squared, and Tessa Van Duyn, CEO and Practice Leader at Moores. And so a big thank you to each of our learned friends for joining us on this call. We're going to kick things off with a rapid fire round. So we're going to go around the panelists and think about how legal roles and the workforce is being reshaped by AI with just some quick headline, potentially controversial questions. And so panelists, each of these questions will require only a one-word answer. That may be difficult for some of you, I'm not saying who, but if you can limit yourself to one word, most of it will be true or false or disagree or a sentiment, that would be great. We've got 4 questions and we're going to ask each of you each question before we move on. And the first question to think about, if you had to describe your overall sentiment about AI in one word, what would it be? What is your overall sentiment or feeling about AI? I'm going to start, SJ, with you. What, in one word, is your overall sentiment about AI?
Transformative.
Love it. Tessa?
Opportunity.
Great. Nam?
Excitement.
All right. And Jan?
Butterflies.
Butterflies. I like that. I love that. Here's a controversial one for you. Agree, disagree. AI can automate 44% of legal tasks, and this was predicted by Goldman Sachs. AI can automate 44% of legal tasks. Agree, disagree. Nan?
Disagree.
Jan?
Disagree.
Tessa?
Disagree.
And Shelley?
Disagree more.
Fascinating. We've got some consistency on the panel here early on. A related question, agree, disagree. AI will create more legal industry jobs than it destroys. AI will create more legal industry jobs than it destroys. Agree or disagree, Tessa?
Disagree.
Jan?
Agree.
SJ?
Agree.
And Nan?
Agree for me.
Okay, interesting. I'm looking forward to talking about that one, just bolding it in my notes to come back later. And then last one, agree, disagree. Now is a great time to be a junior legal professional. Agree or disagree, Nan?
Agree.
Agree, Jan?
Agree.
SJ?
Wrongly agree.
Wrongly agree. Okay, love that. And Tessa?
Agree.
Awesome. Okay, really interesting. I feel like we all overlap on a lot of these, and so it'll be interesting to unpick where the nuance is. I wanted to start by actually getting your sense, your personal experience. We're talking here about emerging legal AI roles and also how AI is changing existing roles. And it's been about 12 months now since OpenAI released GPT 3.5 to the public. And about 9 months since GPT-4 came out. And in my mind, those 2 moments have really been a catalyst for all the momentum, excitement, energy, and anxiety, maybe if you're me, that we're seeing around technology and the law right now. But it's not just the big picture stuff. It really is the day-to-day. And personally, I know that this has meaningfully impacted my work. It's impacted my workflow. It's impacted how I read and digest information. And I know that it's impacting the bigger picture of sort of where my career is heading as well. And so I wanted to ask you, in the last 6 to 12 months, how has AI changed your job? Has it affected your day-to-day work? And looking forward, do you see that continuing in the next 6 months? We're going to start with Jan and then go to Nam from there. Jan, how has AI changed your job?
So I think it's changed it in two ways. Because my role is focused on the capability and development of the people who work here, it's obviously changed both the way I do my work, but also the content of the work that I do. So I was sort of thinking about this question from two different perspectives. If I'm answering it purely for myself, it's really interesting to think about the way we deliver programs, we design programs, we build programs, we identify development needs. So there's an element of that. But I think for me, the bigger focus has actually been on other people's roles rather than my own, and the work that we need to do in order to ensure that we are. I've seen some fantastic sort of words around this: pre-skilling, reskilling, upskilling our people to ensure that our current talent is able to cope with the changes that are coming, but also that we're identifying the right talent coming through. And what we're looking to identify is starting to look different, as we might expect. So that's probably the broad brush. In terms of that, sort of a couple of little examples, and I thought I'd give you two. One is a tiny one, one's a slightly bigger one. But the first one is, we actually had somebody very early on in the piece say, do you reckon I can use ChatGPT to do coaching? And obviously coaching is a capability that we see as being really important for our people. And our first thought was, oh God, no, you can't do it. No. And then we started playing and giving ChatGPT some instructions around, well, this is the kind of model we use. So if we tell it to use this model and this is the scenario, what do we come out with? And it was fantastic. And so that's something you can really quickly arm people with, where you say, this is a capability we expect of you. Here's a tool that's going to help you implement it really well. So that's a nice little example of just day-to-day use. The bigger one for me in my role is, because my focus is around capability, we've built what we call capability maps, very deliberately maps, not frameworks or structures. So they're guides and they're ways in which people may or may not build behavior and capability depending on role and experience and all of that sort of thing. The degree of fluidity we've had to build into that because of these changes has been a really, really challenging and fascinating thing to work on. So they're probably the two examples I can think of off the top of my head. Yeah,
interesting. I'm really keen to hear more from that organizational and development perspective. That's so great. But it sounds like maybe not the tasks of your job, but the shape of your job and where your job is headed is definitely being affected. Now,
absolutely.
What about you? Keen to hear what's changing in your day-to-day. What do you think will change in the future?
Yeah, I think, Sam, for me, I'd like to start by just sharing my thoughts on AI. Like, for us, AI is not new. And the sort of release of GPT-3 is really bringing to limelight how quickly and how incredibly technology can evolve. And for me, how that's affected my day-to-day is there's now a lot more talk about technology capability, especially in legal teams and law firms. And it's sort of evolved in a sense where, 24 months ago, we were talking about the technologists leading the charge with regards to legal tech and technology capability. But now we're sort of starting to come to this understanding that, talking about technology and understanding technology is everyone's capability. And, within the last 12 months, we've gone from not really understanding what a pre-trained transformer is, and now advising our clients into the use of GPT into their business as well. So, it's no longer an excuse for anyone to say, hey, I don't understand what AI is. I don't understand what an API is. And, everyone now has that responsibility to upskill themselves and, say that, technology isn't too hard. So in terms of how that's changed our day-to-day, like for me, it's that shift in terms of talking about capability and technology capability, and building into our strategic roadmap, how can we empower our team to better elevate their levels of digital maturity to the point that's now expected by our customers and our clients as well.
Yeah, great points. Sounds like it's shaping your organization. I love both of those perspectives. I want specifics though. Tessa, SJ, can you give me specifics? How has AI changed your workflows, your day-to-day work? Yes, it might change what you're talking about, the programs you're developing, the services that you're delivering to clients. But Tessa, you're a CEO of a law firm. SJ, you're a partner in a law firm. What is AI doing to your day-to-day work? Would love to hear your thoughts.
I have GPT-4 open on my desktop all day. It helps me all day. It is a fantastic assistant. It costs me, I think, $30.11 per month. It works 24/7, never gets sick, never takes a day off, never complains, even when I ask it over and over and over to redraft things. I use it predominantly for two aspects. One, creativity when accuracy doesn't matter. And I'll give you an example. A little bit later today, I'm going to speak at a Chief Data Officer and Analytics conference, and they've asked me what would be my data superpower. Well, I'm not stopping with my data superpower. I got DALL-E to actually create a whole picture of me as the quantum querier with the superpower, which they're going to use. So creativity is amazing. Another example, and this was done with the Centre for Legal Innovation, we were doing a global presentation about AI and the use of innovation in Australia. So I queried, and at this time it was GPT-3, what's a really cool title for something that, has an Australian vibe? Guess what it came up with? Sizzle or Fizzle, cooking up innovation down under. So then, of course, we had a whole barbecue theme. So creativity, it's incredibly good at where accuracy doesn't matter. Now, of course, as lawyers, accuracy absolutely matters hugely. We have ethical and legal responsibilities, but AI is very valuable at creating drafting where the creation of the content or the drafting is difficult or time consuming, but the validation is easy. And that's something that when you've had a bit of experience, you can ask GPT to create some drafting for you. So I had a crack at it just before this and asked it to create a most favoured nations clause, knowing, of course, as I do, what a most favoured nation clause is, which is if someone later comes and wants to contract with me, I'm going to give them just as good a deal as someone before. Or if you contract before, I'm going to make sure that anyone who comes subsequently gets the same deal. Does that make sense? So that everyone has got the same deal. It did a really good job. Now, I did tinker with some things, right? But that was a lot quicker than me starting with a blank sheet of paper, for example. The other thing that I have used GPT-4 for is I've created a database of journal articles, so not client information. But I've also done an embedding with an API call to GPT-4 for a semantic search query. So this means now I don't have to read all these articles. If I have a search, I can ask in natural language and it will produce to me, depending on how many Ks I ask for, either 1 or 2 or 3 examples of the document and the part of the document that is responsive. So there's a few practical everyday examples of how I use it.
Geez, I think you've got some very mature use of that technology there. You're starting to sound a bit like Thomson Reuters. Tessa, we're going to come to you, and I want to move to the next question, but also keen to hear your thoughts on how AI is changing your day-to-day job. But the next question is about the tasks or roles or skills that you think might be under threat. It is pretty clear that things are changing. Some tasks are going to go away, and some relatively quickly. And I want to get your thoughts on where you think AI is eating legal industry and legal professional tasks and skills. And where do you think AI will be most useful and utilized in the short term?
Thanks, Sam. I certainly can't follow SJ's lead in terms of my level of use of ChatGPT-3, but I've used it as well in my role. I think it's similar to Jan's because we at Moores we're a medium-sized law firm, so we're a lot smaller than Jan's organisation. So a lot of my job is probably similar to yours, Jan, in that it's about enabling everybody that works at Moores to bring their best selves to work each day and to deliver the outcomes and the value creation for our clients. So it has shaped my role in that I need to be across the trends. I need to understand the impact, the opportunities, particularly for us. But it really, from a practical perspective, it's about ensuring that we've got the right capabilities within the firm to leverage those opportunities and to swat off the threats, right? Yeah, I mean, somewhat ironically, the first thing that I used ChatGPT for was to draft a policy about how to use ChatGPT in a medium-sized law firm. Obviously, like SJ, it was a first draft, don't worry. It was changed, but I mean, that for me, I was starting from a blank slate otherwise, and it saved me hours. And so for then I was hooked. It was all in, using it in creative and safe ways.
That's great. Sorry to interrupt, but just to put some frame on this, I read a great piece and the contention there was that AI, as it currently stands, say GPT-4, is very good at drafting. In fact, it can produce, work quality that is very similar to an intern or a grad. That was the assertion of this particular piece. I want to get your thoughts. You've just mentioned that you use it to draft a policy. What do you think about that? Do you think that's true? And do you think, what does that mean for you and your organization?
I think it is true from my own experience. In terms of what it means for us, I love it because it's actually creating space for me to do the things that I should be doing as a CEO. I can now carve out space to focus on the high touch, high value, strategic shifts that we need to make, that future thinking, all of that stuff that you'd expect of particularly of senior people within organizations. So for me, it's a dream because it's the fastest kind of way in which I've managed to create that space. And I've tried many things, we've all been there, and that I've tried all sorts of tools, and this is the one that's worked the most efficiently and effectively.
And if I can build on that, isn't it great, Tessa? It's like the Swiss Army knife of AI because you can use it in so many ways, limited only by your imagination, of which all of you have so much.
Yeah, awesome. Really interesting. Okay, so we're talking a little bit about the tasks or skills that are potentially under threat. And it seems that sort of entry-level first drafting could be one area that is under threat. Jan or Nan, do you have any thoughts before we move on skills or tasks that you think are, being eaten by AI right now or will be in the near term?
I think that drafting piece is the one that most people probably most juniors are very concerned about, that's where they see they cut their teeth. And we often have those conversations about what are the things that the junior lawyers or the graduates learn on or cut their teeth on. And they're things like discovery, due diligence, first drafts of things, which are the things that almost automatically have the application of AI across them. So the question then becomes, what's the substitute for that for them? Is there a substitute, and what does it look like? But I think for me, that's probably those three things. There's first cuts of things, but those big bulk uses of information. So around, like, as a junior lawyer, I certainly cut my teeth on discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Nam, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think outside of the legal aspect, there are a lot of non-legal, I guess, tasks that sort of are involved in the day-to-day of being a lawyer, that I think generative AI or AI in general is going to definitely accelerate. I think if you strip back what we call AI and just think about what it can do, all it's really doing is being able to really quickly and efficiently digest a lot of information and a lot of data, and then respond in a way that is I guess, consistent to that data in response to like a particular stimuli or data input. So yeah, anywhere where we've got large chunks of data and really sort of cookie cutter or consistent, I guess, pathways on how we use that data, that's definitely an avenue where AI is definitely going to fast track.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we obviously talk about the legal lens, and that makes a lot of sense, but you can easily underestimate just how much non-legal work you have to do as a lawyer. When we survey in our practice corporate legal departments, we commonly find 30 to 50% of their time conservatively is non-legal, is spent on non-legal tasks, people management, project management, hiring, all of these things where I think there's a real opportunity for productivity gains. We've just spent about 10, 15 minutes talking about tasks that are going to be eaten by AI, by the threats. And so what's the answer, right? What are the top skills that legal professionals need to be cultivating right now to prepare themselves, not just to be protected, but to actually capitalize on these changes and opportunities? This seems like a moment of opportunity. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were to pick three, what are the top three skills that legal professionals need to cultivate right now? SJ, we might start with you.
Sure thing, Sam. So the top skills aren't in fact legal skills. They're skills that we all as human beings need to be cultivating in this AI-infused environment. And top skill number one is be curious. If you haven't tried out these tools, try them out, experiment with them, because as you play with them and have fun, suddenly you'll start thinking, your imagination will get working. You'll think, wow, I can use it in my role in these ways. And the truth is, no one knows how best to use AI in your role better than you do. So curiosity is number one. Number two is be a voracious learner and have agility to change, because this environment is changing rapidly. The pace of change is just going to become even more velocity infused. So it's going to be faster and faster. So be able to change and learn voraciously. And the final one, I think this is interesting, but I think it's particularly interesting for lawyers, is that we think about productivity as doing the same things we've always done quicker. I challenge people to think about, how do we solve people's legal problems and give them pathways to capture opportunities in ways that surpass the previous and traditional paradigm of how we deliver legal services? I think that there are tremendous entrepreneurial opportunities. And I think that is a key skill for the lawyers who are capable of identifying and having the imagination and the drive to capture those new and transformative ways of delivering the business and the practice of law to our clients.
Yeah, absolutely, SJ. It sort of echoes some of the points that were made by Jordan Furlong in yesterday's presentation about the different types of skills, more proactive, more opportunity identification. As I was listening to Jordan, I thought, gee, it sounds a little bit more like a management consultant or just a different type of problem solver to lawyers who are traditionally sort of maybe reactive, is the perception anyway. Nam, would love to get your thoughts on the top three skills legal professionals need, especially Law Squared, very innovative firm. You've got a great, interesting background. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I think as we frame this as an era of AI, or probably more relevant is it's an era of rapid change in technology. What I've been talking about a lot lately is this notion of digital adaptability, and what that is the ability to really quickly pick up a piece of technology, understand what it can do, where it can be used, and then think about how to apply that. Or whether or not it's not even relevant to be applied into your day-to-day, your business, on how you help and service clients. And digital adaptability comes about through three things. The first and most important thing is the mindset. Having that mindset, as SJ touched on earlier, that technology isn't scary, it's not hard. It's something that everyone can pick up, everyone can understand. If you think about technologies that we're using day to day, there's already a lot more complex stuff than generative AI out there, right? Your Apple Watch, how does that work? Your car, how does that work? The fridge, how does that work? So no one's incapable of understanding technology. It's about having that mindset and that curiosity to pick up a piece of technology and think, okay, how can I use this? Because technology is a tool that empowers what you're trying to do. It's, again, to what SJ said earlier, it's a Swiss Army knife, right? And you can use a Swiss Army knife to cut something like a knife, or you can use it to hammer in a nail if you think about it and have the will to do so. So having that mindset that technology isn't scary, picking that up and understanding what it can do. And the second part is around agility, and what agility is about that rapid thinking and the ability to fail forward and fail quickly if necessary. Sometimes technology is not always going to be serving us. For some instances, generative AI might not actually serve the business model that of your firm, or help you in what you're trying to do, and that's fine, right? But it's about quickly being able to make that decision and move on. And we might have new and shiny tools every year. That doesn't mean that we need to use it. And agility comes about by understanding the other facets of what you're trying to do. So not only this is what I'm trying to do, but also why. What's the business that surrounds it? What's the people and processes that surround it? And what's the current technologies that empower it? The third piece is not a skill, but it's more about the environment. So having an environment where you can actually dedicate the time to learn about these new technologies and experiment with these new technologies, because it does take time. And all lawyers are time poor, and so is every other professional in the world. But I can assure everyone on this call that all of the good leaders, at least, are thinking about how can we empower our staff and our team to learn, to be curious, and to experiment.
Yeah, great points, Nam. And Jan and Tessa, I want to come to you now from a different perspective, the organizational perspective, because Nam and SJ have just given us what could seem like good news, which is, hey, what you need right now is curiosity. You need a great mindset. You need space for experimentation. That all sounds great, because we don't have to do a data scientist course at university that takes us 6 months. But from an organizational perspective, as I'm sure you know, embedding those things into your culture is really hard, perhaps even harder than getting your organization to upskill on traditional hard skills. How do you change the mindset of an entire law firm, or perhaps an entire generation? And so I want to ask you first, Jan, and then you, Tessa. We've talked about some of these skills. How is your organization building those skills, and what challenges are you facing, if any?
I am incredibly blessed that I work at a large law firm that has innovation and forward thinking in its DNA. So this environment, from the minute all of this started hitting, we were encouraged to play, we were encouraged to experiment, have a go, get on there, do things. A lot of people would have heard about the AI bounty that was offered by Gilbert and Tobin. So absolutely encouraging everyone across the firm. And I know we're sort of focusing very much on legal and legal professionals, but all of the operations staff, all of the EAs, everyone across the firm is absolutely encouraged to engage with that. It was a big deal. Big announcement around the winners, and all of that's starting to be implemented now. So it's not shallow or hollow talk. We can see where that's going. And you can see that if you have a thought, you have an idea, there's every chance that it will be followed through and implemented. So I think being in that culture and environment is a brilliant start. I fully acknowledge that not every place has that sort of head start, but I'm really grateful that we do. I think what that means off the back of that for me is two things. The first is we have a group of people who are very much focused on the technological and technical side of all of this and building all of that out. And they're experts and they know what they're doing. And I'm not messing with them because they're brilliant. What I see as my role then is what needs to sit beside that? What do we need to build to ensure that people are engaging with all of this in a way that's most valuable and most productive for them? And I think Both SJ and Nam touched on something that's incredibly important, which is around building those mindsets, ensuring that we are encouraging the development of cognitive skills. And we're hearing a lot of talk now about human skills that we didn't hear before. So much better than the term soft skills. If we can eliminate that from anyone's vocabulary, then I've succeeded today. But those human skills, the resilience people need to build, the empathy they need to have with others and what's impacting on them from a leadership perspective. Yes, understanding what the technology can do and what our clients expect of it, but also the way that it's impacting on others and their own self-awareness around their impact. So those are some of the things that we're really looking at. In terms of one of the other things I mentioned earlier, that notion of pre-skilling, which is something I've been hearing a lot about. So instead of just going, oh, this is happening, we need to upskill. How about this might happen, or this might happen, or this might happen. So let's pre-skill people so that if it does, we're equipped, and identifying what some of that pre-skilling is. And there's a huge appetite for that. And I think if we want to engage in that learning that we're talking about, that's what's attracting people's attention.
Yeah.
And I will use every tool in my box. I will use CPD as a leverage to get people to do that, but I don't have to for those topics. There is a real sense of excitement and engagement around that. I think the challenges, just to touch on those, really in an environment like this, is that people become so obsessed with the tech that it can be easy to forget that there are people using the tech and how that's all happening. So very much kind of making sure we have that balance. That's probably, for me personally, what I see as a big challenge. And the other is the one that I think we've kind of touched on obliquely, but the fear people have of obsolescence around parts or all of their roles, and how we manage that if it in fact becomes true, but also how we ensure that we're creating a talent pool that can step in to whatever that becomes. We've got brilliant people. There's no reason why we can't help them adapt and be the people who are the talent for the next step. So I think those are some of the things that have certainly been occupying our minds.
Thanks, Jen. That's really, really interesting. Tessa, I'd love your thoughts on this. How's your organization helping build skills for the future, and any challenges you're facing?
Yeah, I'll start with the challenges. I think any human organisation would understand that, one of the inherent challenges that we face as human beings is a natural resistance to change. So that is something that we're seeing as a huge blocker, I suppose, and particularly in context, in light of the compounding effect of the pandemic and how that's impacted our workforce, being in Melbourne, Australia, that resistance to change is probably more ingrained. And so to build on, certainly the skills and behaviours that SJ, Jan and Nam have spoken about, I wholeheartedly endorse. But I think what we also need to incentivise is courage. We need to, really create psychologically safe spaces and environments for our people to feel like they can dabble with this in a way that is safe. It's playful. Lawyers are naturally risk averse, right? But they're also very good at being opportunistic. I think they can capitalise on those opportunities when presented as and framed as an opportunity rather than a threat. Language and culture really matters for us at the moment. So I think there's that. There is sort of creating this safe space for people to play and to take risks and to fail fast. That's one thing. The other sort of cultural lever that I'm trying to pull is to incentivise the right behaviours as well. And that is through changing KPIs, for example, doing things in a structural way, in the right cultural environment to make sure that people feel safe enough to do this, to try and, as I said, incentivise the kinds of behaviours that are attached to the skills that we're talking about, which is curiosity, It's, you know, really doubling down on empathy, and that digital literacy is what we're calling it. So we've introduced, you know, we're introducing a digital literacy program for all of our staff as part of our Moores Academy, which is sort of the manifestation of our learning and development program. Because we're seeing that is obviously a critical, you know, it's not a nice to have anymore. It's a baseline expectation of our existing workforce and certainly our future workforce as well. And that for some people also takes courage. That's learning new skills. Like you talked to SJ about being a voracious learner. For people that particularly are in the kind of tail end of their professional life, for example, and even me in my 40s, I'll confess, I'm a voracious personal learner, but learning new hardcore skills that I haven't sort of learned for decades is really challenging. And layer that with being a perfectionist and, you know, a trained lawyer who has to have the answers to everything. And if she doesn't have them at the top of her list, then she needs to be able to find them.
Yeah.
It's very challenging on a personal level. So you're sort of dealing with that at a macro level, or, you know, it's being felt at scale. And that is certainly something that we're trying to address. But yeah. I won't lie, it's, you know, it is a challenge. Do others agree? Yeah. Am I not on an island here, am I?
No, I don't think so. I'm keen to throw to others in a second, but to wrap up sort of this section on the organizational perspective, I think it sounds like leading organizations like the ones you're a part of are taking a pretty similar approach, right? And I'm seeing this at Minters as well, making space for experimentation. Collaboration, I think, is a really big part of experimentation too. We're really lucky, as no doubt you are as well, to have legal operations professionals and technology professionals. But, you know, it's not always easy to have them connect with a senior expert lawyer who might be able to contribute their perspective. So making sure that there's collaboration in the experimentation. I'm sure this is happening as well. And Tessa, clearly you're demonstrating this. But for me personally, the leadership aspect is massive. I think seeing a CEO of a law firm as an employee of a law firm say AI is a priority. I helped, or, you know, Microsoft Copilot helped me write this email. It really changes your perspective. Like, wow, this very senior, important person is taking the initiative, is really doing something about this. It's changing their day-to-day work. I think that makes a really big difference as well. And it's definitely something we're seeing at Minters. So it sounds like there's, you know, similar approaches to the organizational perspective. But Tessa, to pick up your point on the individual perspective and throw to SJ, you know, what can individuals do? You're a voracious learner, but also in the context of a busy lawyer's workday, billable hours, how do you find time and what do you prioritize when you're trying to upskill yourself in these relevant areas?
I want to pick up on something Tessa said just before. Tessa, I suffer from exactly the same fear and difficulty and anxiety about tech. In fact, I have a very difficult relationship with technology. I must say that the tech gods do not always shine on me, and they always never shine on me when it's really, really important, which is why doing live demos is just an absolute nightmare for me. One of the things I do, and I think probably you do this too, is I like acknowledge, look, okay, I know technology is kind of not my forte, but this is incredibly important. And wow, if I can lean into this, how exciting will this be? So I like to think about it as kind of doing the body swerve around the fear and the anxiety to try and embrace the excitement and the opportunity. So I just wanted to share that, because I think also when you hear people, leaders like, you know, Tessa saying, you know, I find it difficult, or leaders like in your organization, Sam, saying, Copilot helped me write this. I think that's unbelievably powerful. Unbelievably powerful. Now, from my own perspective, you ask me, how do I prioritize? Oh my goodness, that is such a difficult question, because there is so much going on. It is not possible, even if I read constantly every day, to keep up with everything. What I try and do is I follow two prongs. One is very naughty of me, which is my curiosity and what captures my imagination. And the other one is the opportunity that's going to bring bring the biggest bang for the investment. So you would have recalled I spoke about the API call to GPT-4 to do summarization. The vision is that can be scaled. So I've started just with journal articles, but I can now create another database that has policies, and you can query policies. So all sorts of different things. So there's a tremendous amount of scale. Now, do I think Copilot can probably do this, right, when we get Copilot? So why am I bothering to do it? Well, part of the reason I'm bothering to do it is because that is how I learn. Hands-on is how I learn. So even if I'm throwing this in the bin when I get Copilot very shortly, it doesn't matter. I've learned a lot. I've learned part of the language. I've learned things about what works, what doesn't work. And what I found doesn't work is if I don't ask the right questions, it's not going to tell me anything new because I don't know the right questions to ask. So two things, I go with what interests me. Maybe that's a bit naughty. But the second thing is things that can scale and can be used for a variety of other purposes within and beyond the organisation.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. I do think following your interests is underrated. That's how you get the motivation. Now, and we're going to.
Can I just add on that? One of the things I did, and this was quite a number of years ago before Transformers was a thing, right? But I built a generative model and I trained it on Blackstone's Laws of England. And you just seeded it with a few words and off it would go talking like a lawyer, right? And my friends, my non-legal friends thought it was absolutely hilarious. Anyone legal was like, oh, rolling their eyes. And I remember saying to one of my data scientist friends, well, that's kind of fun and funny. And it was exhibited at the Fringe Festival, but it's not useful. And this data scientist said to me, SJ, maybe not now, but someone will find a use for it. And look where we are now with generative AI. So sometimes the fun stuff ends up being the fabulous stuff.
Love that, SJ. Love that. We have some great questions coming through in the chat, some spicy ones as well. So we're definitely going to get to those. But I have one last question that I really wanted to ask because it's close to my heart. I've been thinking a lot about junior professionals at the moment, and I've spoken with a lot of them. I know that there is some see only opportunity, and many, I think, feel some level of anxiety around what this means for the future. They're just graduating, maybe in the first 5 years of their careers, and they're looking at what could be a fundamentally different career trajectory, potentially as a result of the developments over the last couple of years. And so I want to get all of your thoughts just briefly on this, and then we'll move to some of the great questions in the chat. How is AI impacting the role of junior legal professionals? And what advice would you give to your younger self? What would you do if you were graduating right now or in the first couple of years of your career to navigate this time and the changes that are happening right now? Nam, I'm going to start with you, and then Jan, I'll go to you. We'll try and get everyone's thoughts on this.
I feel like you might have started the least credible person in this area, Sam, because I am not a lawyer, and I've sort of made my career in the technology space. But at a point in time in my life, I did want to study law, and maybe this is, I guess, an extension of sort of that reflection. I think for me, I think if I was to talk to people who I know in the profession and think about my own, I guess, brief consideration of the law, and think back, why do you want it? Why do people want to become lawyers? And a lot of the time, it does start with I want to help people, right? And these concepts of fairness and justice. And then they become lawyers, and then billables gets in the way, and dynamics and workplace dynamics and politics, and those things happen, and that's what it is. But I think if you were to just reflect in terms of the why, and maybe go down a bit more into those 5 whys in terms of why did I want to become a lawyer, and what do I want to do as a lawyer? I think lawyers are going to find out that it's more than just drafting a contract. It's more than just being able to sign your name at the end of a piece of paper. And I think as each individual discovers what that is for themselves, I'm quite confident that there's going to be space for that in this new era of technology.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're absolutely right, focusing on purpose. I will caveat and say, still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So it can be a hard thing to figure out. Jen, what are your thoughts? What advice would you give to your younger self navigating this time?
Okay, so I'm probably right at the opposite end from Nan. I was a practicing lawyer back in the late 80s and 1990s, which was a very different time to be a junior lawyer, and then moved into the operations side of things. I think one of the things I would tell myself, and it's something I actually do say to our juniors a lot now, is you are the future of this profession. So what this profession looks like in 5 years, 10 years, you are integral to that. And so part of this is what you want to do with it and what you make of it. That you're going to have so many opportunities to do some amazing stuff. You might do that by remaining within the traditional profession, if there is one in 10 years' time. You might do that in a different way, but you are the future. So I think that's a really sort of empowering way of thinking about it. And off the back of that, one of the things that I think about is when I first started practicing law, essentially we had two options. You became a partner in a law firm or you became a barrister. That was it. Things evolved rapidly, and about 10 years later, you could go in-house as well. But still, they were your options. And I look at the options that are available now, and they're endless. And one of the other things that I constantly say to our junior lawyers is the role you end up with probably doesn't exist yet. What the legal profession looks like when you get to that point may bear no resemblance to what it is today, but that's got to be exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. I'm going to call you when I'm feeling down about my career, because you've got it, language all sorted. And I will say my job, I'm pretty sure my job that I'm in right now, which I love, didn't exist when I started studying law. So those opportunities
Mine didn't.
Absolutely there. Yeah, there you go. SJ, we're going to come to you, and then Tessa. Advice to your younger self. What are your thoughts?
Well, my first piece of advice would be go and speak to Jan Christie. That was utterly inspirational. I just loved what you said. Two things that jump out for me. One is kind of traditional and one's kind of not. To my younger self, I would say hone those communication skills, because your ability to get your clients to take your legal advice is predominantly dependent on your ability to cultivate those human qualities of persuasion and explaining and meeting the client where they are. The second one has to relate with what we do as lawyers. And I know it's typical to think that what we do as lawyers is we draft documents and give legal advice. My preference is to say we solve legal problems and we create pathways for our clients to capture opportunities. And on that, to my younger self, I would say, think about new and innovative ways to solve client problems and capture pathways for their opportunities, because that's what clients really want. They don't care about legal advice and drafting. They care about problem solving and capturing opportunities for them.
Love that. Very, very good. I love how you phrase that. Tessa, advice to your younger self. But can I also address, we had a comment or a question about people at the tail end of their career. The comment around that can be a challenging time. It might be more challenging for those people to navigate AI and tech. I know you weren't insinuating that those people are less flexible or less tech savvy, but would love for you to give your thoughts on both sides, advice to your younger self, and then maybe how you're thinking about more senior professionals and how they can take advantage as well.
Yeah, thank you. So advice to my younger self would be to adopt a growth mindset. That is, I think, the most critical mindset, critical tool that you can take with yourself throughout your entire career, no matter whether you're navigating through a legal pathway or not. And the other is, I wish I'd tell myself to undertake a computer sciences degree, so that this kind of phase that I'm going through may not be as challenging. And thank you for raising that and kind of qualifying the nuance of my comment. When I talk about the tail end of a career, I was talking specifically about a career in law, and I think that there's a tricky kind of when you're doing a return on investment analysis around investment in having to build these new skills. It can be hard to see, I guess, what the reward is, but I would say, and that's where that sort of change resistance can come as well, because the investment's not so clear. But certainly we're seeing now that this is not something that's a challenge or an opportunity that's facing just the legal industry, right? As in our personal lives as consumers, we need to be able to navigate this kind of whole new world. And it's not even a new world anymore, is it? Nam would know. We're in it. It's not new, it's here. It's the existing world. It is the world that we're all existing in. So I think there is, once you delve a little bit deeper, there's certainly a use case, many use cases for having these sorts of skills. It's more that I think the natural assumption at that point, at the tail end of your legal career, you might be saying, well, what is that ROI here? Is it worth my while? I think, we don't all have the wonderful, amazing structures and supports that Jan can provide for her people. And I think it can be a little bit lonely, and you can feel like, I'm really banging my head against the wall here, because it's a different language for a lot of us that we're trying to learn at rapid pace.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone for that. I think I'm now looking at all these incredible questions that have come through, all of them really detailed. I'm going to pick out, I think we probably have time for 2, maybe 3. Some of them are about the specifics. I think SJ, people are interested in, how do you create a data set? What can you provide more detail? How do I get a plugin? Some really specific questions around that. Where would you point people to?
I can provide the code. Yeah, I can provide the code. It's open source to the CLI for anyone that's interested, if that's helpful.
Yeah, and more generally, I think some of this is a question, like Tessa, you just brought up computer science. We're now using this language, APIs, plugins. More generally, if people are interested in how they might be able to play with the back end of GPT, for example, or dive a little bit deeper, where would you point them?
If you want to learn prompt engineering, just to use it with the consumer free version of ChatGPT, OpenAI has actually created a free online course, which I found actually quite useful to create prompts that are most likely to be responsive. With respect to building things, my first recommendation is find some computer scientists or IT people or data scientists and make friends with them. Because I would say they have been the best resource for me, and they're the ones that can absolutely point you in what is the most targeted opportunities for you. Having said that, Harvard University offers a course called CS50. It's free, right? And I did it once. I liked it so much. I went back to do it again, and wow, imagine what they now have CS50 for lawyers. So it's free and it's online. And that was great, because that goes through the language and gives you a lexicon to engage with your computer scientist mates when you go out for coffee.
Yeah, love that, SJ. I will say CS50 is not exactly a walk in the park, having had a crack at it myself, but clearly if you've got the brain power, go for it. We've got, I can't pass on a question from John, which if anyone knows John, you won't be surprised that the question, I won't read it out in full because it's long but incredibly well worded. He's asking about the billable hour. How does this impact on young lawyers in particular if AI threatens the billable hour in a world where lawyers record, measure, and reward time based on the billable hour? Nam, I know you're on an alternative model, would love to hear your thoughts, and then anyone else, please feel free to jump in.
I want it to threaten the billable hour. Over to you, Nam.
I guess we don't have the billable hour, and for us, the right incentives are there when it comes to talking about efficiency with the use of technology. Without bashing on the billable hour too much, that's a completely different conversation altogether. I think we can have another hour on that. But I think that firms that do implement the bill out need to create the space and create the time for their team, for their teams to experiment and explore these solutions. Not just because it's it's is the way of the future, but more importantly because that's what clients are expecting nowadays, and it's going to be I guess the case soon, if not already, that clients are asking as part of tenders, what technologies are you using to make your processes more efficient, and how does that work in our favor? How does that save us money? Because they don't want to be spending more than they can, and I guess for the big firms that are not open to doing that, well, that's fine, because those clients will come to us. So more than happy to encourage that. So yeah, I guess from a new law perspective, we it's always been aligned to our the blood of our organization that we can create the time to experiment with technology, because it does empower us to be more efficient in serving our clients.
Absolutely. I think, this is a hard question to answer, a hard problem to solve. But I think from what I'm hearing, people are actively thinking about it, which is the first step, recognizing that this is a legitimate challenge, that the way that we create value is already changing and will change faster than it has in the past. And I think I'm hearing discussions about it at all levels. So I'm really excited that this will mean real progress in that area. We've got one person who's a computer scientist studying a JD, who's just put that in the comments. Who knew it would be such a good mix of degrees? This person's effectively won the lottery, as far as I'm concerned.
Nostradamus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're running out of time, but we just have so many great questions coming through. Could we just wrap off with sort of closing thoughts, closing comments? Does anyone have a burning thing that they would like to share before we wrap up? I would say my sort of key takeaway is lots of positivity, despite all the risks, despite all the changes. So much positivity and so much opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I'm an eternal optimist, and I think there's nothing to be afraid of so much as still needing to bring courage to this new challenge, in the same way that we have to lean into, be brave about every shift in society and every kind of natural evolution that happens around us.
Completely agree. I think that's a great note to leave it on. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and to our wonderful panelists for your great insights and for a great discussion. We hope you enjoyed this session. On behalf of the Centre for Legal Innovation, we point you to the free resource hub. This video will be recorded. It will be available as a recording on the resource hub. It will be an episode of the Centre for Legal Innovation's Legalpreneurs Sandbox podcast. So many great resources on their website. It's definitely worth checking out. If you'd like to receive updates about this, you can obviously follow the CLI on LinkedIn and other social media, where Terry and the team are prolific, absolutely prolific. So definitely worth checking out. But until then, good luck. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And thanks again to our panelists for joining. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
See you later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.